Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the State of the Arc podcast. My name is Mike.
My name's Kaysen.
Today, we are going to be talking primarily about user interface, UI, design in video games. What makes a good one? What makes a bad one? Before we get into that, though, we're going to be talking about some interesting stories from the week. First of all, I think the biggest one. Reggie Fils-Aime, the president of Nintendo of America, a well-beloved figure in the executive world of video games,
Yep.
is retiring. He's peacing out. He's going to spend the rest of his life on yachts and lavish vacations. And, well, most importantly, jokes aside, with his friends and family. Just enjoying all that money he's made.
All that money.
He will be replaced by a very appropriately named Doug Bowser.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
As the new president of Nintendo of America.
Yeah, congrats to him, man. Reggie, I remember a couple years ago he was kind of technically demoted. He used to be the president and CEO of Nintendo America, and then the president of Nintendo Japan kind of took over the CEO job of Nintendo of America, something like that. And he was mostly just left as essentially the spokesperson for the last couple of years. And like, you know, it was cool, but I guess I'm not too surprised given how that all happened, that he's like, you know, he's ready to call it quits. Yeah. I consider him part of the holy trinity of Nintendo, with Satoru Iwata, him, and Shigeru Miyamoto, and they're all one by one just like phasing out. And you know, Miyamoto, he's going to be retiring soon too, and it's going to be really sad. All the people we grew up with, they're just kind of
leaving
on to other things.
Reggie was a really interesting guy to me. Like,
yeah,
he is a passionate gamer himself, and during sort of like that phase of Nintendo's history, when he came on the scene for like the launch of the DS and the Wii, that's kind of like what their executive board, they had a lot of gamers in there. Satoru Iwata was a game designer before he became president.
Yeah,
right?
He wasn't like a lifetime CEO or, you know.
Yeah, he wasn't just like a businessman came in to like run the business. He was a game designer who was leading the company. And Reggie, likewise, was a passionate gamer. He loves playing video games.
Yeah.
And he had this he's real. He's like a large, imposing guy, like broad-shouldered, like big dude.
He's pretty tall, yeah.
But
especially
he's like,
around all the Japanese people he was around. He was like quite a bit taller than them.
He's like the softest.
Yeah, he seems to
be. Like just teddy bear type of guy, just real nice and likable.
No.
But like when he came on, especially on the scene at first, he was like trying to come across like his first words were, "I'm Reggie, and I'm here to kick ass and take names." So trying to like be like hardcore. And so he became like a meme, sort of, but like a meme that everyone is not like making fun of him in the sense of like you don't like and make fun of him. It's not like malicious, but like the beloved type of meme. Like everyone loves Reggie. And his body is ready because he's my body is ready. Like became a meme.
My body is ready. Yeah, that's yeah, I can't remember what movie that came from, but yeah,
an extremely like memeable persona that I think the community is really gonna miss. Yeah. And I don't know much about this Doug Bowser guy, but he has the right name for the job, obviously.
Sure, I have heard. I've seen his name before. I didn't realize he was like next in line, so to speak.
So I want to just reflect real quick on the Nintendo E3 2004 press conference, which is probably, in my opinion, the best press conference like in the history of E3. Nintendo that year like absolutely freaking nailed it with their conference. This was the year that they announced Metroid Prime Echoes, Resident Evil 4, Twilight Princess. Like, it was crazy. And so you had Shigeru Miyamoto come on the stage with sword and shield as they announced Twilight Princess, and they were returning to that aesthetic, and everyone's freaking out. And this was Reggie's first appearance as, well, I don't know if he was yet the president of Nintendo. I think he was probably in a similar position to what Doug Bowser had been in previous to now. But anyways, about 127 into the video here, we get Reggie come on stage for his infamous, or famous, I should say, first words. But they showed a bunch of games there, and everyone's hyped up, right? And his first appearance.
My name is Reggie. I'm about kicking ass. I'm about taking names. And we're about making games.
That's so nerdy. But like then they do a show reel of like all these cool games they're making, right? This was kind of at a time, I'm going to turn it down a little bit. This is kind of at a time where Nintendo, I mean, this was before the Wii was announced. This is still GameCube era, basically. But the DS was announced, I think, around this time. But they're competing with, like, Halo. You know, this is a time when Halo was, like, at its peak.
That's right.
And, like, realistic cinematic shooters were kind of the thing. And so, you know, they came into this press conference with Metroid Prime and Resident Evil 4. I skipped ahead a little bit. They were kind of taking more of that edgy tone to what they were doing, which they did a hard reversal on when they kind of announced like the Wii and stuff later.
Oh yes,
it was a whole blue ocean strategy. But this was okay. So they're talking about the Nintendo DS. He's showing that off. But then towards the end, when they announce Twilight Princess and they show it, and then Shigeru Miyamoto comes out on the stage. This was like the hypest moment in the history of E3, dude. I was so freaking, like, losing my mind. Because this was right around the time where, like, streaming video was starting to become normal. So I was, like, watching it on my computer for the first time, watching E3, and saw this, and I was just like, holy crap!
Yeah.
So awesome! And then he comes out, he's in shadow. This is around 44 minutes in.
Yeah, I'm there.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Shigeru Miyamoto.
And he swings the sword. Anyways, this was an amazing E3 for Nintendo.
When he's left-handed, nice.
Yes. And it just kind of takes me back. I mean, this is how long ago it was that Reggie sort of like came onto the scene. And he's been with him for a long time. A lot of good memories with him. We wish him the best. Reggie's a beast.
Dude, he's speaking English.
Yes, Shigeru Miyamoto is speaking English. Isn't that crazy?
You never hear him speak English.
Anyways.
Wow.
Anyways, we wish the best to him, but also
Reggie,
excited
man.
to see what
I wouldn't be
Doug will
surprised
do.
if we see him pop up again in a few years doing something else big, you know?
Yeah. He's awesome. Okay.
Okay.
One thing we forgot to talk about last week when we were doing the Nintendo Direct stuff is Oninaki, which is the new RPG Factory game.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, people tweeted us about that.
So people were, you know, wanting to know our thoughts on that a little bit. So you get this part out of the way first, and this is no secret for people who have been following our thoughts on RPG Factory, but they've kind of had 2 in a row games that like had the right like idea, I feel.
Yeah.
Had, like their heart was in the right place, but just like it was real boring.
It's like we like where they're going. We like what they're trying to do. We love that. We don't love what they've done so far.
Yeah.
But we love that they're doing it and eventually they're going to hit it on the head, right? I Am Setsuna was, you know, okay, in Lost Sphere, you played out a lot more than I did.
I didn't like it. I liked I Am Setsuna a lot better.
Yeah, it just wasn't. It wasn't quite there. The look of it was pretty good. The feel, the intricate battle system was cool, but they're not there yet. But I love that they're going to keep doing this. Apparently, you know, every year or two they're going to have a new game, and that's sweet. Eventually, they're finally going to hit onto something, and at least they're going in the right direction. Where a lot of companies aren't doing this stuff at all.
So this game that they're making right now is going to be a little different from the last 2. First of all, it's more of an action RPG. It's not a turn-based game like the last 2 were. Secondly, one thing that people are are more excited about is that it's one of the members of the team is one of the 3 Chrono Trigger directors, Takashi Tokita, is involved as like a creative producer on the project. So some people are saying, oh, okay, like then I have more hope for it. You know, he's working on it. But I think, not to be cynical, but to just keep things in perspective, it's the same game director as the first 2 and the same writer of the story and as the first 2 games. So certain key personnel have not changed, but Tokita is involved in the project. And so that's something that, you know, at least I don't know to what degree. I mean, being a creative producer, right? If you're producing the game, you're managing the game, and you're in the creative part of it, which I would assume is, I mean, it can mean so many things. Being a creative director or a creative producer, right?
I know.
Like,
sometimes it's just an honorary title, honestly.
Like it could mean a lot of different things. They don't
actually do anything. Yeah.
It could mean
like a consultant. You know?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what his role is, but even if it is more or less boiling down to consulting, maybe he can sort of give them some tips that will help them improve their storytelling, which is the one thing I feel they really need to improve upon.
You know, the game looks pretty cool, and it's fun that they keep doing. What I thought was going to happen was that all of their games are going to kind of be I Am Setsuna over and over again, just like a similar battle system, kind of like what Final Fantasy was for a long time. And they haven't. Yeah. They've been changing things up a lot every single time. And they're really experimenting, and it's pretty cool. I like the way the game looks so far, Oninaki.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it looks cool. I mean, I'm excited to see more about it, and you know, I might play this one. This one looks pretty good.
There's an interview with Famitsu, asking kind of about the process of how the game sort of became an action RPG or whatever.
Yeah.
So Famitsu asks, how did it end up becoming an action RPG? And the director, who is Atsushi Hashimoto, says, at first I tried making an RPG with a lone protagonist. I even threw in a drawing of Dragon Quest I in the drafts. Since there wasn't going to be any party members, I thought about throwing in job elements and looked into all kinds of things. Then we have the producer here saying, so I said, wouldn't an action RPG be better with this plan? This reminds me a little bit of like Terra Enigma. And actually, I think we've talked about this in the past too. Like action RPGs are usually better for lone protagonist games. If you have a party of people and you make it an action RPG, you have to like sacrifice the ability to control like all the characters in your party, right? Because you can only control one guy at a time in like a real-time action-based thing.
Yeah, there's pluses and minuses, yeah.
So if you're going to do that, you know, having a single character or a single protagonist usually works. So he was trying to make a turn-based RPG with a single protagonist, and people were like, hey, why don't we make this into an action RPG instead? Think like Terra Enigma, you know, games like that where you have just one person you're controlling all the time. He goes on to say, even within the team, many have voiced their desire for an action RPG, so it wasn't like Sasaki-san used his voice of authority, but he simply pushed the discussion. Actually, when making I Am Setsuna and Lost Sphere, we made it in a way that action RPGs are made, with hit collisions in battle using skill range and such. Also, we could possibly make an action RPG in the future. Yeah. They're making it into an action game. I'm going to put the game on screen a little bit here so you guys can see what it looks like. But in that interview, he goes on to say that they're focusing more on story elements. And so it seems to me like they're moving in a direction that might be better suited for what they're making. Like the aesthetic, like the model design is very similar to I Am Setsuna and to Lost Sphere. But the trailer seems to indicate sort of like a more focused experience on the world and the story.
Yeah, it seems to indicate that, yeah.
And a more of an original thing, not so much as trying to call back and say, oh, we're making something like Chrono Trigger.
Exactly.
Or we're trying to make something from your childhood and bring it back. It's like this is sort of theirs. You know, like they're not making it based on something else or trying to recapture something else, but just something that they are making from within themselves, so to speak.
Yeah.
And, you know, 3-strike policy would apply here for me. If this sucks, then I'm not going to give them another chance.
Right.
But I think that they seem to understand. Well, I like action RPGs anyways, so
Sure, yeah.
I prefer them over turn-based combat. So that already excites me. But, you know, the fact that they've stated, you know, we're going to be focusing more on the story this time, and the trailer seems to indicate that to me. I have a little bit more hope that this will be a better experience than the last two. So I'm hopeful, but I am also probably going to wait a little bit to see, you know, what the reviews say, that sort of thing, before I end up like, I'm not going to like buy this the second it's available, kind of a thing, right? But it looks cool. I think it looks all right.
Yeah,
So,
it does. This is the kind of look of a game that I really like, honestly.
yeah, it's cool. Okay.
Oh, by the way, this isn't here, but I'm just gonna bring this up real quick because I heard it. Apparently, Google is gonna have some announcement this coming week about a video
console?
game, like
I heard that they were making a game console.
Netflix for games or something like that they're doing.
Ooh,
that,
like a service, like a streaming
yeah,
service.
a gaming service, and it could shake everything up. It could change everything, and there's nothing about it yet, so we'll probably talk about this next week. But apparently Google and even Apple is considering jumping in on the video game market as well. So this could be the year of like a huge shakeup in the industry. Just wanted to throw that out there now.
We will cover that probably on next week's podcast.
Yeah, Google will unveil new gaming hardware. Oof. This is going to be crazy.
Console war reignited.
Oh my gosh.
Google has entered the fray. Okay. Last thing, wanted to go over. Square Enix is apparently restructuring their company after a disappointing Q3. Put this on the screen here. I'll just kind of read some of the article here. It seems that gaming companies are restructuring left and right this year, shortly after the Activision Blizzard news, that, you know, debacle where they announced the mobile Diablo game.
Oh my gosh.
Square Enix is following suit with a plan to consolidate after disappointing Q3 results. According to its financial report for the 9-month period that ended on December 31st, 2018, profits had fallen by 60% from the year before.
Whoa.
During the investor call, President Yosuke Matsuda mentioned a restructuring, but we've recently learned more about the situation. Here's the quote from the call. As of Q3 of fiscal year 2020, we plan on reorganizing and consolidating the 11 existing business divisions at Square Enix into 4 business units in order to increase the efficiency of our workflows, make more effective use of our resources, and consolidate our expertise with the aim of improving profitability. For context, this response was to a question that asked about Square's Q2 initiative to focus on smartphone games. For now, was it Square Enix that recently announced that game called Last Idea? This is not even a joke, dude.
Are you serious?
I'm not even joking. Is this Square Enix?
I haven't heard of that.
Dude.
Yeah, Ross.
Yes, this mobile phone RPG called Last Idea from Square Enix. Yeah. I literally could not believe that. It's like, what the fetch?
Keizakubi. Rasto idea. Yeah, oh my gosh. That's
Last
crazy.
Idea. Isn't that like... Anyways.
Oh, movie. Oh, whoa, weird.
It's just...
Keiza movie?
I don't know how self-aware they are with that, but, like, I would hope that they know how meme-y that is.
Yes. Especially for, like, Final Fantasy or whatever. It's just like, come on. It was weird enough when Last Story came out. Hironobu Sakaguchi made a game called Last Story, and I was like, that's basically Final Fantasy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And now they have their final idea.
Last Idea. It's crazy.
Geez.
Anyways, goes on to say, Q3 saw the release of Just Cause 4, Dragon Quest Builders 2, and Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Unfortunately, none of these titles made up for losses year over year. I mean, those are some big games that were released in Q3. And to me, their response to this makes sense. I mean, they had 11 existing business divisions, And Square Enix, while they've been publishing Eidos games for a while,
Yeah.
like Deus Ex,
Tomb Raider. Yeah.
Tomb Raider, stuff like that for like
Hitman.
a Western
They've been
audience.
doing Hitman,
And Just Cause.
Yeah.
And those were pretty successful in the initial reboot of Tomb Raider and stuff like that. They have showed continually this like, oh, we sold only like 3 or 4 million units. That's like way under what we thought.
They've
like
been doing this for 20 years now.
having terrible expectations and obviously spending way too much money in developing these games when there isn't the audience for it that they were hoping for. So, I don't know. They're also not... When you think of Square Enix, you don't think of Tomb Raider. Like, just off the top of your head, you think Final Fantasy, you think JRPGs. And so there might be, I don't know, kind of an issue there with them focusing with so many different business divisions on so many different things. So consolidating to me makes sense. The next part of the quote says, we think the main reason is that we're unable to provide an experience that was novel enough that players could choose to buy them before any of the other numerous major titles on the competitive landscape. Nice. Our games aren't novel enough. Good job. Also, while it's true that we are seeing a shift away from sales of boxes to digital downloads, with this many titles competing with one another, initial sales are definitely an important element in increasing user awareness. For that reason, we do need to engage in a certain amount of advertising just ahead of a new title's launch. That said, this quarter saw the release of Kingdom Hearts 3, which topped sales charts in the UK, so quarter 4 may fare better upon results. The company also plans to announce multiple new titles at E3 2019. So they're focusing more on mobile games. Like Last Idea.
Last Idea. Oh, they're way too smart, man.
And they're consolidating their business divisions.
Yeah.
And we'll see what effect this has on major titles in production right now, like Final Fantasy VII Remake and...
Yeah, stuff right now. I wouldn't assume this would have much effect for a couple of years, though. Like, it takes a while. A game like Final Fantasy Remake that's already been in production for so long is like, well, I don't know that these guys are going to change it much, or that consolidating Square Enix is going to do much there. But maybe for games that haven't yet been shown, like Final Fantasy 16 or something like that, they could be doing some stuff behind the scenes that I just think it'll be a while before we actually see the effect of this.
Okay.
They're too big of a company.
Yeah.
It just takes a long time to make changes like this.
Okay, that is it for Stories of the Week. We are moving now into our main topic.
All right.
Which is going to be on user interface, UI design. Kaysen actually does this for an occupation.
That's my job.
Occupation. Tell us a little bit about that. What do you do?
So what I do is I do user interface for website design and for interactivity, specifically along the lines of, like, I work for an educational company, and we do a lot of stuff for elementary schools. And we have like an online publication that it needs to be accessible for kids and teachers, which is like a really hard thing to do because some of the kids, we do stuff from K through 8, I think. And so it's like 5 years old to 14-year-olds, and then the teachers, which, I don't know the age range of them, but it's not, basically 5-year-olds to 70-year-olds need to be able to use this product. And so it's really hard, but we work with the colors and the buttons, and okay, if this is all in text, then it's got to be, we got to make sure that the people who are reading it are the people who are meant to be even capable of reading right now. So this isn't for the kindergartners. So we do a lot of that kind of stuff. And I basically will lay out the designs of the website, of the programs, of all the stuff that we use, even on the back end when we create the articles and tests and everything. I help design the software that is then used by other people in our company. So
in other words, Kaysen is an expert on UI design.
Something like that.
I'm glad he's with me because I am not an expert, but I have done some research and I've had intuitive ideas about UI design, which come from 2 decades worth of playing JRPGs and navigating menus.
Exactly. Everyone here, whether you know it or not, you know about UI and UX. it's just locked away somewhere. And when things don't make sense to you and you don't know what to do, that's because the UI was poorly done. And you may not be able to connect that immediately in your head, but that's why.
So let's talk about, first of all, you just use the term UX.
Yes.
So let's talk about the difference between UI and UX.
Now,
go ahead.
Yeah, so UX is user experience, right? Yeah. It encompasses everything. Like, not a lot of times you think of a user interface as being the menu, right? And generally speaking it is, but it's also any information displayed on the screen, anything that's used for the player to get an idea of what's going on. It's just the display of information. But UX includes like the controller, and it includes like your character. Where do you need to stand in front of a door to open the door in your video game? If you're over here, it won't work. If you're over here, it won't work. Like, the UX is the whole experience of the game being crafted for the user. And it's something that most art in general has a hard time with, because art is typically an expression of the creator. It's not focused on the user very much. But if you want to have good UI or UX, you need to focus on the end product, the person who's using the product. That's who you need to gear everything towards. And artists, I think, sometimes have a hard time with that.
Okay, yeah. So I guess the way I would break that down is the UI are the visual elements that make up the user interface.
Yeah.
The UX refers to the architecture or the map of where that information is stored. In addition to what you're saying, like, how is the player going to interact with it, right? So imagine a blank screen, and they sort of like map out with squares and different shapes. This information is going to go here. This information is going to go here, and this information is going to go here. That's the user experience. Where is it all located, right? And how is the player going to navigate to it? How large? Well, that's more UI, but in any case, where the
color,
information,
font, size, that's all UI, but
the structure or architecture of where this information is going to be stored and how it will be accessed.
Yeah, like the big picture.
Is user experience.
That's UX, yeah. UX people aren't usually artists. They're not usually actually designers. Yeah. They do QA testing. They do like A/B testing. They get focus groups, and they're like, "What do you think about this?" And people go in and they film all these sessions, and they just take notes. And it's like, hey, people really gravitated towards it being in the top left somewhere, right? So okay, so this thing should be in the top left, and then the UI people take that and run with it and do whatever they can with that information.
Yeah. Two things that are brought up, and these are things we were going to talk about, but let's just acknowledge them now. Lego Dog says, how important would you say it is to work on the UI early in development? Is it better to work on it early, or is it okay to put that down later down the checklist? Again, I think the UX people should be fairly early on.
Yes, UX right at the beginning. Absolutely. They need to be in the planning stages.
So that they know where the information is going to go. And the UI, which is actually applying the visual polish to all of that, can come later down the line. But as long as the designers of the game know how the user experience is going to work, then you'll be in good shape. That should come early on. Now, Dude McGuy's question is a good one. Addressing it to you. I've heard that website design, for website design, everything the user is trying to find should only take 3 clicks at most to get to. Is this true?
This is true. However, it is an ideal that is harder to attain than you think, because any UI or UX person will be like, oh, easy, 3 clicks, whole website, anything's accessible, can do, right? However, you've got other people you need to make happy, not just the user. So the UX people have to also take into account the company, the salespeople, the board, the president and CEO of the company. What do they want the website to do? And it's easy enough to just let the user get wherever they want. But let's say that the president of the company is telling you as a UX person that they want the user to do this, 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 and this. And when they do this, this happens. And when they do this, this happens. And it leads to this. And there's a whole chain. And it's a mess. But it's the job of the UX person to now figure out a flow chart to put all of it together. Because you're not just making the consumer happy. You also have to make the investors happy. You have to make your company happy. You have to make the sales commissions and all, you know, you have to make everybody happy. It's not just about the user. If it was just about the user, 3 clicks, easy, easy, easy. Let the user choose where they want to go. However, the investors want us to funnel the users to certain places that maybe the users don't want to go, ends up taking more clicks, but it's like the company
IKEA
makes more money. So it's a hard balance to actually do that 3-click.
Design your website like IKEA, dude. You just make them walk through every single section of the whole store.
You force them to see. They just want light bulbs, but you're going to make them walk through.
You got to go through the furniture. You got to see the mattresses. You got to see the TVs. You got to see everything.
Bad UX. However, it results in, I'm sure it results in higher sales, in which case bad UX is good for the investors. So it's pays.
Okay, so there's the difference between UX and UI, and we'll get more into clicking 3 times to get to things.
Yes,
in a minute. I think it's probably a bigger problem to integrate that into what Kaysen's doing into website design.
Yes,
I think that more video game companies understand they're trying to please their user.
Exactly, the video game end product is directly tied with the sales.
Though
for most things it is, but. Anyway.
Though with things like microtransactions, we are starting to see more invasive type UI design influences that try to lead you into buying things.
Well, you know,
and that annoys people a lot.
It's really annoying because if you're talking 3 clicks to get somewhere, but if when you pause your game, the first thing that pops up is an ad and you say no thanks, you already used 1 click, so you got 2 clicks to get wherever else. So yeah, it is annoying.
But generally speaking, especially in like you know, the old school RPGs that we cover on the channel a lot, 3 clicks in through your menu should get you to where you need to go, and nothing beyond that. Otherwise, it starts to get like too much.
It does. But I also remember one other thing with the company I work for, because we do elementary school stuff. We also have to work through the government and the school districts.
Oh, right.
And so the company wants us to do all these things. The school districts want to make sure we hit all these things. And then the users want to make sure that they can do whatever they want. And anyways, the 3-click thing's really hard. I'm just saying.
It's tough.
Lots of things going on there.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the principles of UI design.
Yeah.
Which is, I would define that as being the art of presenting complex information in a simple and intuitive way. Most importantly, an intuitive way. You can look at a menu with tons of information on it and understand what you're looking at and what you should do without paragraphs of tutorial explanations, if possible. Now, this is going to depend on the type of game you're making as to how much explanation you're going to need. And this is all about knowing your audience, which is, I would say, the first principle of good UI design. Who are you designing this for? Is it 70-year-old grandmother teachers? Is it 5-year-olds who can barely read at all?
Yeah.
You know, you have to know who you're talking to.
It's where colors and shapes and icons are very important when you're dealing with such a widespread.
Right. And in addition to this, for game design, is this going to be played on the couch with a controller? Is it going to be played on a PC with a mouse and keyboard? Is it going to be played on a smartphone where you tap everything? These are all things you need to know, because the principles and the art behind how you map out that user experience will be different depending on the input, depending on how they're going to interact with it. So that's step 1. Then the type of game you're making is going to dictate the type and how much information, how much UI you're going to need as well. So if you're making an MMO or a JRPG or a simulation game,
you kind of need a lot.
Like a flight simulator, or let's say even civilization games, or a trading card game like Hearthstone, you're going to need tons of UI. You have information all over the place. It's very complex. There's lots of layers to it. There's strategy. There's all kinds of stuff, all kinds of information the player needs to keep track of, and they need to understand in order to play the game efficiently. Versus a very narrative-driven experience, maybe like the old Telltale games, Walking Dead and things like that, you could have very minimal UI. There's not a lot of information the player needs to understand. You point and click to move, and you click on dialogue options, and you watch the story unfold. So
Sure.
you decide what kind of game you're making, and that will determine how much information the player needs. Then you get into the actual art of how you're going to present this, right? I think the guiding principle at the top should be that you want your user interface to feel consistent and unified. So essentially you need like a core thematic or a theme that's sort of going to like be consistent across every page or every element of your UI. And that's going to be guided by the brand. You know, is this a science fiction shooter? Yeah. Is this a medieval fantasy MMO? Is this some sort of like crime, you know, mystery drama sort of thing? Those things are going to inform the look and feel and the consistent, unified theme of your user interface. And that should be hand in hand with sort of like the type of game and the story you're telling and that sort of thing. Now, this is going to apply across all kinds of different, I guess, elements of design. It's going to affect your logo. It's going to affect your typography. So the fonts that you're using as your headers, your large text, your medium text, your small text, when you're going to be using italics or bold, all of these decisions need to be made, and there need to be rules set up so that you know we use this font in this type and in this size as headers always.
Oh, they call that I can't remember.
Is there a word
I can't
for it?
remember the word right now. No, there's a word. It's to make sure everything's uniform. It's why in the world am I forgetting this? Okay. Anyways, there's
a word for it.
There's like a sheet that basically everybody looks at, and it's got all the stuff on it.
The design document. The
yes, but there's a word for it. I can't remember exactly the word. Actually, it's right here. I'll look for it.
I know what you're thinking of too. A style. The style.
A style guide. That's what it's called.
Style guide. Yes.
There's a style guide. So the UX and UI people will work together and make a style guide, which is everything needs to look uniform. It all looks like this. Anytime there's text, it looks like this. Anytime there's a menu option, it looks like this. When you click it, it looks like this. When you can't click it, it's grayed out. All that kind of stuff. That's part of a style guide. Yeah. And you should, if you're working without a style guide, you're in trouble.
Well, and it's important for a couple of reasons. I mean, you think about the font you're going to use for headers and your main text and stuff like that. All of this stuff is more subconscious for the user who's experiencing it. But like if you see like a bolded an 18-point font, you know that that's a category. It's like, okay, this is a category here, and then the text underneath that is going to give me an explanation for that category. So your eye is already scanning across the categories and is able to instantly recognize that information in that category is what I'm looking for. Rather than having all the text on the screen, the same point, same font, same boldness for headers and text, it makes it harder to locate and browse through the information to get to what you actually
it's hard to
want.
categorize, because then you have to do it all in your mind, and it's difficult. You want to do as much work so that the user doesn't have to.
Exactly. So when you identify all of this stuff with your typography, it makes it easy to browse and find and locate the information the player really wants to know in the moment that they need it, because that's very important for the user experience. If you're playing a game and you're like, I don't know how to do this, I'm stuck, or I don't understand this, I need to go look up the tutorial for this that I skipped before or something like that, right? You need to be able to locate that as quickly as possible, because the user will get frustrated if they can't figure out what they're supposed to do, and they will quit the game and walk away if using the interface to find the information they want is too much of a hassle. So it's actually very important. On top of typography, you have iconography, and this is what Case was alluding to when you have young kids who don't have a large vocabulary, maybe can't read very well. Having icons that make it easy to understand, oh, that's equipment. Oh, that's my item inventory. Oh, that's my magic. You know, whatever it is, you can see the icon for it, and you understand immediately that that's what I'm looking for, kind of a thing. Yeah. Again, your eye is scanning through the screen, trying to locate the information they want. Icons should be able to be easily read and understood. And then color is another really, really big one. Yeah. And for this, I'm going to actually pull up...
Yeah, Mike has some pretty good examples of this.
Xenoblade Chronicles 1 as an example. So I have that up on the screen now. One thing that I loved about the first Xenoblade was that there were a lot of arts, or essentially abilities, that the characters learned and that you could level up over time. There was a lot of them. But it was so easy, without actually having to memorize Wild Down, for instance, which I have on the screen right now, to memorize that Wild Down slices at an enemy's feet, inflicting topple, and it's a physical attribute, targets one enemy, its range and distance. Without memorizing all that information, I can look at the icon for Wild Down, this green sword icon. Okay, again, we're using iconography and color now.
Both.
And I know because it's green, it's going to inflict topple. Because every ability in the game that inflicts topple is green. And there's no exceptions to that. It's consistently, always the green abilities will cause topple. The blue abilities are healing or party buff abilities. So if I need to heal, or if I need to put like a protect spell on or something like that, I go to the blue abilities for that. So the icon and the color will let me find what I'm looking for. The yellow ones will inflict daze, and so on and so forth. So the color and the iconography and the color are used in an absolutely genius way in Xenoblade to make complex information very quick and simple and easy to understand, very intuitive for the player, especially if you've never played an MMO-style combat system like this before. You look at like the way that that's mapped out, and then you go look at something like World of Warcraft, and like just blasted with information and icons and stuff all over the screen. And this is much easier to pick up for someone who's new than World of Warcraft is.
Yeah.
So I think Xenoblade 1 does that extremely well.
Okay. You know who else just does a super, super awesome job at their stuff is Nintendo. And, you know, part of what is difficult with UI is when you have to make things work for young to old audiences. But at the same time, if you can figure that out, that's typically the best kind of UI, because it's easily understandable no matter how old you are. And Nintendo is often catering to young kids, but they pride themselves in having a huge, you know, they run the gambit on ages and genders, and everybody plays Nintendo games, right? And because they have to include younger kids in that, it makes it difficult for them to figure out how to make everything work. But because of that, their menus are always really simple, and they're really like in line. They follow their style guides really well, and it's really intuitive.
So another principle of good UI is shape language. So the shapes of your windows, and whether you're using squares and circles, diamonds, you know, the type of shapes that make up your windows, those should mean something too. I think it's like on a basic level, squares usually establish like stability. Yeah. So if you have like a square menu, it's like formal, you know, sort of like way of like blocking out this text. It's meant to be like, this is consistent, stable. This is where this information goes, that sort of thing. But if you use a circle, right, that's more used as a way of focusing your attention onto something urgent, right? You know, it can also be used for like wheels for like leveling up. You'll see like go around and like level up sometimes. But a lot of times circles are used to draw your attention to something urgent, like right here, focus on this. You know, when someone's drawing on a whiteboard and they want to circle something for emphasis, they'll draw a big circle around it like, this is important, this is urgent, like look at this. It's kind of indicative of like a sight when you're like aiming in a shooter or something like that. You're really drawing the attention with a circle towards the center of something. Diamonds can sort of accent something, and it's not quite the same urgency as a circle, but it still guides your eye to key information that's outside of the normal, stable sort of like information in the square or rectangular menus. So using the right shapes in your UI will also guide the eye in the way that you want the player to be able to find and look for information quickly and find what they're looking for.
Yes.
And then layout. Layout is a big part of this too, and consistency in the layout. I couldn't think of any examples off the top of my head. Maybe you have one, or maybe the users will. But it's always really annoying when you have one screen that has the layout done in a certain way. Maybe you have your header in the top left, and you have information kind of like underneath that, and then in the right side of the screen you have something else. I don't know if it's maybe where you can tabs to like different parts or something like that. But then you go into the next screen, and the header is in the bottom right, and the information is over on like the left bottom, and then like the tabs are like, it's all shifting.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't have an example, but I know what you're talking about, and it's freaking annoying.
And your eye is
it's like when you use Photoshop and then you switch to use Adobe After Effects. And
yes,
you're using
and everything's
both,
in a different place.
and they're different. Then in Photoshop, your everything's to the right, but in Premiere or After Effects, everything's to the left, and then that's where your banks are. It's annoying. I hate switching between those two.
Whereas what you should probably shoot for is like the next screen comes up and it feels congruent in terms of like where the information is located, the layout, like where things are placed, where they're positioned. Obviously, you're going to have different information, but it just feel like a new slide came on, not like you have an entirely new page with new color scheme and an entirely different layout and like a different font color and different icons. And you have to like learn a whole new like sort of economy of sorts of like how to navigate versus the last page. So consistency across all these things, your iconography, your typography, your color, your shape language, and your positioning and your layout is really important to not confuse the user so that they can find what they're looking for as quickly as possible.
Yep.
The last part of this would be motion graphics. As Kason brought up to me with animating different pieces of the UI. As Kason brought it to me earlier, this should be subtle. It should not be crazy.
Subtle and fast.
Yes, fast. It should not take a long time.
A slow animation, it's like, it's freaking annoying, dude. Because you have to wait for it every time.
Let's say, for example, like the Pip in Fallout games. He like brings up his like watch and like looks at it.
Yeah,
that is a quick animation. I think it's less than a second for him to bring it up. But like if something like that takes too long, right? The loading time to get and like pull into it, you start to get annoyed, especially for like a 50-hour-long RPG where you're constantly going into menus and it takes a long time. You want things to be quick and easy and fast. We have a new viewer here, GS Magyar. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but welcome. How are you?
Yeah, cool.
Welcome to the stream.
What's up?
But animation can really help draw the eye. So let's say that you have a screen coming up that has lots and lots of information on it. If you pop that on without an animation, the eye is kind of lost as to where it should go first. Now, in the West, we're sort of trained to go top to bottom, left to right. That's the way like the English language is written. You start at the
left,
top,
right, top,
left,
bottom.
You go to the right, and then you move down, left to right, left to right. So generally, that's what they will do intuitively first. They will look to the top left and go right and try and find information. It's different in Japan, where they go top down, right, left.
Right. Yeah, top down, right, left.
Which is very, very different. We'll talk about that in a minute with some UI from Chrono Cross and Final Fantasy IX.
Yeah.
But so if you know ahead of time, that's where they're going to look first, but you don't want them to. I don't know why you wouldn't. There could be artistic reasons why you'd want the person to look at the bottom left first. But generally, if you're making it for Western audience, you'll want the information they're looking for primarily to be top left first and then go this way.
Yeah.
But if you don't want them to do that, one way you can guide the eye is to make those elements move in at different times. So if you want them to look at the bottom left first, animate that in first, and then their eye will go there. And then another element can pop in here, and then you can know, okay, I'm starting there, then I'm going there, then I'm going there. This is the motion my eyes need to go for the flow of information that they're trying to give to me. So motion graphics and animation can really help you if you do it quick to subtly guide the eye to where you want it to go and to create the divisions in your layout, right? So you have this division. I'm going to look at my own camera here so I can see. So let's say this division of the screen up here in my corner has one piece of information, and that's divided down the page in half, and like down here there's another division, and over here there's like a third, or maybe that's split into like 3 different ones or something, right?
Yeah.
You animate this one in first, they look there, and then this one comes in just like a quarter second later, they go there to there, and then these parts come in last, and you know, okay, I need to select my character first, then I need to indicate, okay, which piece of equipment, like which body part, and then we come over here and we see the list of all the different equipment, right? So it's like character first, animation, body part for equipment next, then we come into the list of equipment and we select. So we go bam, bam, bam. So you animate it in like that in a way to trains their eye on how they're supposed to go about navigating those menus.
Yeah.
Okay, so once you apply all of those principles together, you should have an intuitive interface using the right icons and everything else so that the player can pause, go into a menu, and intuitively, without even really being told what to do, understand where to go. Now, this is the difficulty of making that happen as a UI designer is going to depend on, are you making an MMO? Or are you making, I don't know, like...
How much info do players need
yes.
when they're just on the screen? How much do they need? Super Mario Brothers? Not too much. Coins, time limit, I guess. But like World of Warcraft, yeah, you've got to know all sorts of stuff, especially as you're interacting with other people. There's like a little chat box, and yeah.
Colin Peluso asks, would you say that there's a science behind comparing the various Facebook and YouTube layout evolutions, or is it just random? I remember people used to complain about how Facebook's UI would change every other month.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never really looked into
I've heard about now. I don't know. Yeah, I'd have to think about that. I can't remember what it used to be, which I guess is a good thing. As far as I can remember, it's kind of looked the same way forever. But I could be misremembering like crazy. I do know for YouTube though, the videos used to be in kind of a different spot. The videos were, well, no, they were kind of where they are, but the title was above the video, not below. So nowadays, if you go to YouTube, you'll see the title underneath the video. It used to be the title was on top. And YouTube, I guess they decided that, hey, when people click a video, they've already read the title. They clicked the title, right?
Right.
And so when you go to the page, what's the very first thing? What you're saying, top left, what's the very first thing they should look at? It should be the video. There shouldn't be another redundant piece of info or anything like that. It's the video is the top thing that loads, other than their menu interface for like, you know, the home menu and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, my assumption is that would be why they changed that. I don't remember most of their other changes though. I'm sorry.
Yeah. That is a good point though. I forgot that the title of the video used to be on top of the video.
It used to be there, and there's no reason for it to be there. So
that does make sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that we've gone over all of this, let's go ahead and jump over to some examples. Now, I was a bit critical of Chrono Cross for its UI design. This was something that I got some clapback about when I talked about it. I think it was largely because I hadn't really thought through all of this. I was just complaining about the UI and saying like it was unintuitive. I did not understand what the freak I was doing for like 3 hours. Right. And people were like, what are you talking about? It's so easy. I was like 5. And I figured it out, okay? So you're just a moron.
Hey, sometimes kids figure things out quicker than adults. Come on.
That is true as well. But now that we've actually now that I've actually looked into this, I think I have a much better understanding of the parts of Chrono Cross's UI that I think are actually pretty poorly done, and I can put a better objective sort of criticism and analysis on it into words that I think will be more clearly understood. So, you know, let's just take a look, first of all, at some of the aesthetic choices chosen for Chrono Trigger's UI, just when you're like in conversations. Here at the beginning, I'm at 39 seconds into the video, Kason. We have a text box with kid. So we have, you know, these are common tropes of JRPGs of the time period, text-based. We have the character's portrait inside of a rectangular box with the font that, you know, obviously is their dialogue. You know, generally those boxes, especially for Final Fantasy, were always blue, like a blue gradient color. In Final Fantasy IX, they changed that to gray with the texture for some reason. But here they have this bamboo framing, and sort of like a wooden texture behind it, right? And to me, this makes a lot of sense because it's an island theme. The entire game world takes place on this archipelago, this chain of islands, and it's got that kind of like chill islander sort of vibe to everything, right? So I understand why they did this. This is a choice that makes sense. Now, when we actually get into the menu itself, when you click triangle and you go into the menu, which happens for me in this video around 1 minute, at exactly 1 minute, we come into the top menu. Now, one thing that Kason pointed out when we were talking before this is that the layout here could be influenced by the Japanese, what would you call that? The way that their eye will flow down a page.
Their writing, the way they read, it's just different.
Right.
So it's top right.
It's top right, down.
Down. And then
right
left.
to left.
Yeah.
Versus, let's say, Final Fantasy IX, top left to right.
To the right, and that's where the menu is. Exactly. Yeah. It's almost the same. It's just rotated 90 degrees for the way that the Japanese read.
So anyways, let's just take a look at this this page right here, right? Just the top page on Chrono Cross. First of all, they have an interesting aesthetic choice here with the actual like what would you call it? What's the term for like status, elements, equip, items, like the different things you can select?
I don't know.
Well, anyways,
options.
Whatever you call that, the options, okay.
Yeah.
They have the hand of like a clock is sort of like the idea that will rotate down and make the selection on the options. So that pointer is like the hand of a clock, which is the time theme.
The
it's
word chrono,
cross, right? Chrono Trigger has to do with manipulation of time. Yeah. So, you know, that to me makes sense. What I really don't understand is the choice for the background texture. And for me, this is a couple of reasons. It's this ugly brown, just like almost like sandpaper texture.
Yeah, kind of like sandpaper, yeah.
And I'm not sure why. Like
I almost think it's supposed to be beach sand, but
maybe that's true.
I can't tell because it looks like these things are just kind of drawn. Maybe it's stone. I really can't tell what it is.
Now, you know, getting this technical about like, oh, why did they choose that could seem nitpicky, but there is a reason for it. The reason my eye is drawn to that is for two reasons. One, generally for backgrounds, you want them to fade into the background.
Yeah, you don't want a high contrast background.
Right.
And there's some high contrast here.
There's high contrast in it, and the color really clashes against some of the other user interface elements that I'll get to in a second, but it's high saturation. It's not you want it to be dark, or if it's bright, you're going to use dark text.
Or faded. Usually,
faded, maybe a vignette on it, and low saturation, low contrast. So that all the elements in front of it will pop on the top of it, right? And to me, the elements on top really clash with the background in a very ugly way.
Not the red on that brown looks very not good.
Yeah, not only because it's a high, it's a higher saturation, but a high contrast in it too. So the bright parts to the dark parts have a large contrast in them. And so your eye is sort of like captured by that, and it clashes with the elements. Now, let's move forward a little bit to an element where I want to show this off. Okay, so right here, if you were to click on, what did I click on? I clicked on elements, which takes you to use or allocate. I'll get to that in a second. As one of your clicks has been used to get into the menu, so that's one click. The second click was used to click on elements, but instead of taking us into the element menu, it took us to another choice of use or allocate. So 2 of our clicks have been used. And then if you click allocate, then you're still in the same menu. It highlights one of the character portraits, right? So we've had our 3rd click, and now we have to choose a character. But for a long time, I didn't see this. Do you see the red arrow?
Oh my gosh, yes, I see it. Is that
about 120 into the video.
Left?
Yes, you can click left on the D-pad, and it'll bring up all of your characters that are not in the active party into a list.
That's a small red arrow.
Huh. Now, not only is it red, which does not contrast with the background and is harder to see, but it's tiny.
Yeah.
It's so small and it's easily missable. And for the longest time, I had no idea, because I just didn't see it, that you could left click there and you would bring up a list of your party members that are outside of the active party. But this isn't even the worst of it yet, because at least there is an arrow indicator there. At least it exists.
Sure.
Right? So you click on the character that you want to allocate the elements to, which brings you into your 4th click now, which is one beyond what your target should be. But now we come into the element menu. Again, this is sort of, to me, a little bit of maybe that Japanese influence, because you start in the top right menu. Your arrow indicator starts over there. So you select from the box in the top right rectangle in order to place on the character which is in the left. So you're going right to left with this. Now, again, that's more of a cultural difference. So that was intuitively a little bit different. I intuitively, when I first played, was like, oh, I need to equip by selecting this stuff that is on the left side, because there are actual elements on the left side right now, but those are the ones that are equipped currently. But I thought that was my list, and then I needed to move them over to the right. And again, that's because I'm reading left-right. Anyways, there's a couple of options here. You can remove all of your elements at once or just remove one at a time. And you see the red indicators next to those again, which will take you to more options. If I fast forward a little bit through this to auto allocate, where it'll just assign elements on all of your characters randomly, or just tell it to fill in the blanks of what's currently not allocated. So anyways, beyond that though, and this is a little bit harder to see. I have the interface of YouTube, so I'm going to have to play the video for a second. But it's kind of hard to see that L1 and R1 at the very bottom of the left box there. You see that? And do you see how the L1 blends in color-wise so well to the gray behind it?
The character, yeah.
It's hard to see those things. Your eye is not drawn to that, especially with the use of color. The color draws your eyes to the elements themselves. The red that's on the tablet, the blue that's on the ice lance. Again, these colors clash really hard with the background. The background's too highly saturated and too high contrast. And the most confusing thing about this, though, is that L1 and R1 are down. And you finally find that. But as is the case with other RPGs, that will change the character. So you switch over to the other character with R1 and L1. Now, go to, let's see. Let's go to, because I took out all the, okay, now I'm kind of selecting. If you go to about 3 minutes, 51 seconds in, this is where I'm starting to like fill in. So I've purposefully removed all the elements so that the elements now appear in the the top right box, right? So that's where you're selecting from, and you're going to put them into the slots on the left, which is the empty slot for the character. So I kind of have figured that out now, right? But here is the biggest cardinal sin of this user interface to me. we use the red indicators for arrows saying we can click right or left. Do you see the little slots, tiny little slots that appear kind of over the face of Surge there?
Yeah, I was wondering what those were.
That appear in columns. So we have these vertical columns that have 3 slots in them. Those are the element level, where you can see that is written kind of at the top of the border of the box. You see how it says element level 1?
Yeah.
You have to press, well, first of all, you have to select, you see the red indicator that's pointing, like the larger red triangle indicator that's pointing like inward to the elements box?
Yeah.
That's obviously where your cursor is. So you have to move the cursor into the left box, into the element level box. And then you have to press right or left on the D-pad to switch between the columns, which are the different element levels. Element level 1, element
Those
level
columns
2,
are tiny.
element level 3. They're so small, and there's no red indicator telling you can press right or left.
Wow.
So these 3 slots that are big towards the bottom of the box are coincide with those 3 slots that are highlighted on Surge's face there as the first level elements. So the next column will have 3 as well, the next column 3, and the next column 3, and then the 5th level column only has 1 slot in it. And you press right and left in order to navigate between those.
Yeah, it's very bad. This is among the worst that I've seen, honestly.
So,
and sure, I mean, if you play things as a kid and you don't really know any better, and it's, whatever, you can figure it out, and then it's easy for you.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's, I don't know, that doesn't mean that it's simple UI.
So, let's go into a battle real quick. If you scoot forward again to, let's see, it's probably around like
Towards
7 minutes, 45 seconds.
Yeah, I'm there.
So we see the battle menu here, right? We'll kind of stay away from the field effect on the top left. That's something else to describe. Basically, the power of your elements is more powerful if the color is, if all 3 of those are filled in with the right color. So if all 3 are red, then your red elements are more powerful.
Sure, that's just something that you play the game and figure out, right?
If it's the opposite color, like the opposing color, which would be blue, then your red elements will be less powerful, kind of a thing, right?
Sure.
But if you look down here, you see next to, you see Surge's name. Underneath that, it says level 0. At first, I thought that was supposed to be like the character's level, like the level of the character. But they don't have a traditional leveling system in this game at all. There are no levels associated with the characters.
So it's the items.
No, it's not items.
Oh, it's not, because it has that
element. It's the element level.
Oh, I guess that's what I meant to say.
So you see the slots again with the columns.
4 and then the 5 only has 1.
So you have to attack in order to unlock which element you can use at which element level. So when you do one attack and it lands successfully, you unlock level 1 elements. If you land a second attack, level 2 elements come up. Right?
Huh.
So that's kind of the idea. So as you watch this now, I'll go into the attack and I'll hit the enemy. And I only do level 1 attacks, but if you do a level 2 attack, it gains you 2, right? And level 3 would give you 3 columns.
I see that.
But essentially, you have to unlock which level of elements you can use by using these attacks. And you see they light up like that. And now it says level 1. So that means level 1 elements are available. Attack again, level 2 elements are available. And so I went all the way up to level 5 in this example in order to then navigate again with the... hold on, I got to wait till I actually finish up here. Up to level 4. And by the way, the stamina in the bottom, that's how many attacks you can do, right? So a level 1 attack takes away 1 stamina. So you start the battle with 7, or you start the turn with 7 stamina. You can do like up to 7 attacks, right? So anyways, you have to manage your stamina, unlock the element level you want. And now, again, do you see how there are no red indicators on the right or left of the columns to tell you you can navigate left and right with the D-pad? All of this stuff was so fetching confusing to me. I had no idea how to navigate this as just picking up the game for the first time. I find it to be incredibly unintuitive. Now, once you figured it out, is it easy? Yes, because it's not the fact that the information is complicated. It's just the way it's presented. It is the UI design that is unintuitive and that does not like lead my eye in a way that makes a lot of sense. So anyways,
but once you know where to find the information,
yeah, then it's easy.
Then you know where to find the information. It's no big deal, but it just sucks right off the bat. Yeah, most UI is generally for beginners, right? I mean, yeah, you get used to stuff eventually, but generally speaking, especially UI for a website, I don't know, unless it's a website people go to all the time, you want to make sure your UI works for somebody who goes there for the first time, right? That's the real test. And so for video games, that's how it works too.
Now, let's take a look at Xenoblade Chronicles 1 again. First of all, much cleaner. Just like looks a lot more aesthetically pleasing. Yeah. But a big part of that is the fact that the textured background, again, a tan or brown color, is desaturated. And you use these colors on these icons to really pop the eye to the things that you want to see.
It's really low contrast too.
Yes. Now, let's bring up like a different page here. There was something I wanted to bring up. So when you're leveling up an art, right, look at the use of color. First of all, they really go to 1 minute and 8 seconds. You'll see what I'm talking about, Kaysen.
Okay.
So do you see how they essentially like really faded out the background? It's like dark.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah.
So that they have huge contrast with the information you're looking at here. Now look at the way they use shapes. This arrow that's in red, which gives you the required ability points you need in order to level up. And it points over to that one. So it's like, this is where your backslash is now. This is the amount of damage it does, its cooldown, and all of that. And over here, backslash, now we see in blue is highlighted what's going to change, right? The amount of damage is going to go up into that range. So instead of 570 being the lowest, we now have 627 as the lowest. And at highest 746, before it was 678. So we have a higher range of damage, and the cooldown is a little bit slower, almost about half a second slower, or faster, I should say. You'll get the ability again quicker. You don't have to wait 20 seconds, you wait 19 and a half seconds. Now, the color of the red arrow pointing to indicates, here's what you're going to get now, right? Pointing over here. See, it's going to turn into that.
Yeah.
And on top of that, when you play it, the indicator, basically what you can click, is like a green arrow that animates and glows. And it says, here's what you are going to choose, this or this, right? Now, another good example of the way that they use their arrow indicators, I mean, you can see it here, like how they're using green.
The left, right, yeah.
Yeah, the left, right. It pops because it's green on brown and tan, not red.
Yeah.
But there was
brown is already kind of a reddish hue, sort of. So like a blue or a green works better on brown.
There was an example I had. I'm trying to find where it was, but it showed navigating to another page, and it has a big green icon pointing that way. Anyways, you get the point, though. The color choice is much, much better in terms of like drawing your eye. Oh, here it is. So if you go to 4 minutes and 11 seconds, right?
Okay.
You have those green arrow indicators on the left and right, showing that you can switch the page to the left or the right. And the green
and they're big
pops,
and
pops, and it's large, and it pops against the background. The color choice is well made.
Yeah, this is a very simple menu right here.
Much, much better. And again, you have your iconography, your typography. Everything here is coming together. Animation, the motion of it all, to create one of the smoothest user experiences. I'll put it that way. One of the smoother user experiences I've ever had with an RPG versus one of the roughest in Chrono Cross.
Yeah.
For me, Chrono Cross was ugly aesthetically and had missing elements that made it difficult to know, how do I switch? What am I even looking at?
Yeah.
What do those slots and columns like even represent? Like, what is this? Right?
There is one thing that I want to bring up. A couple comments here have mentioned how with Xenoblade, there's a lot of text to read within this menu. UI isn't so much about what is being shown, it's more about how it's being shown. So it just so happens in Xenoblade that there is a lot of stuff that you need to know. That information's here. There is a lot of it, but it's not confusing. it's not a problem in terms of user interface, because user interface is how you get here and like how the information's presented, not what the information is. There could be 5 times as many words on each side, and that's the necessary information for the game. Not necessarily, it wouldn't necessarily be bad UI, the fact that there's that much info. The question is, how do you get to that info? How understandable is the info? How accessible, how intuitive is it to know that when you do this, if you have 200 AP and you level up and then this is the result, that's what UI is. UI isn't the game or the information. UI is how the game and information are presented. So I just wanted to clarify that real quick. While this may look complicated, good UI can still look complicated. It's just complicated information. As long as you know what to do next, that means the UI it works. As long as you know how to perform the tasks you need to perform, the UI has done its job.
And in my personal philosophy, UI should not be something that needs to be tutorialized. Like UI should be so intuitive that you can navigate menus without having to be told how to navigate menus. Now, if your menus are so confusing that you have to be told how to navigate them, then you have a problem. Because the info in there should be tutorializing the game. This is how this is how the game functions. This is what these menus are for. But if you have to be told how to navigate the menus themselves, then there's a whole layer of unneeded complexity that the player will go, I don't like this. This is too complicated. I'm going to go do something else.
You run that risk. Video games run that risk with having poor UI, especially when there's so many games, especially indie games. It's like if you have bad UI and it's like, how do I do this? I'm just going to do something else. One thing, though, because Colin Peluso did mention that a lot of the text, there's a lot of text and it had the same color. I just want to hammer this home real quick. It is good UI to have, because go back real quick. Go back to like the 1 minute mark, Mike.
Okay. Hold on, let me pull it on screen again.
Yes, there is a lot of text, right? And it is essentially all the same color. However, there is some text that is not that same color. And it just so happens that the blue text is the important text.
Yes, that's where your eye needs to go.
Exactly. The fact that everything else is the same color is actually good UI, because that is not important information. None of it changed from left to right. It could be grayed out. It doesn't matter. Nothing is affected with that text. You can sit there and read it if you want. It's not bad UI. It's just information. But then the blue text, boom, that tells you something's different, and your eye is drawn immediately to that, and that is the difference. That's what makes it good UI. Despite the fact that all the text is the same color, the few words there that aren't the same color, or numbers, I guess, those are the important ones. Nothing else here is important on the image.
Also keep in mind the style guide.
Colin, I'm just responding to your comment.
Also keep in mind the style guide happening here with how the text is used. The headers, / have a gray shape behind them with white text. And that's how you know the category of what we're talking about. Then we have the black text underneath that, which is then a description of what / is. That is then divided by a gray line, and we have the bullet points that go into all the attributes.
Background, like stripe pattern, which is just visually easier to read.
So it's easier to distinguish the header, the description of what that header is, than to all the attributes of that art, right? All of that is subdivided in a way that is intuitive and easy to follow. And like Kaysen is saying, the fact that it is all in the same color is important because we need to draw the eye to what's changing.
Exactly. That's the important stuff. Good UI. Colin,
so this is good UI.
He concedes. Ding, 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 ding. I'm just, it's a joke. We're just having fun. But yeah, this is good UI. I mean, it's simple, and they did a lot of things right here.
I just want real quick to say thank you to DaysMan31 for the subscription through Twitch Prime. Thank you for your subscription. Appreciate it.
And Real Dracula Man said this podcast is going to be hell for people listening audio only. I apologize. There's no way we can do a UI conversation
without visuals.
Watch it, guys. Watch it later if you have the time.
Yeah, if you're listening to this audio only and you're having trouble following what we're saying because you can't see it visually, come visit the YouTube channel Resonant Archive.
Yeah, Resonant Archive on YouTube, yeah.
On YouTube, and you'll be able to see kind of what we're talking about. But Daysman says
Daysman 31 was an audio only until today. I'm sorry, this is important. Video games are visual.
That is true. We're talking about a visual medium. You need to be able to see what we're talking about. Anyways, so, you know, again, these are just some of the more basic principles. Obviously, as professional UI designers, you would go into a lot more detail as to why you would choose this shape in your shape language, or why you would do this color or something like that. But it's important to understand, I guess, as the layman, right, as someone who at least is talking about it, to understand the basic principles. And I think that we've pretty much covered most of the basic principles of UI design. So when you're frustrated with something in the future, I think you can look back on these principles and go, hey, yeah, they've messed up here. This thing is not done well, and this is why, right?
And it doesn't make the game a bad game. It's just confusing, and they should have spent more time helping making it a little bit more user-friendly. And that's, you know.
But I will say
there's some good games that have bad UI, but
that's true. So like UI isn't everything, right? A game can still be good with bad UI. I still think Chrono Cross is a good game despite its clumsy UI. But you can't, and on the inverse, the flip of that, you can't save a bad game with good UI. If the game is bad, the UI is not going to fix that.
That's true. UI is
however, a good UI can keep you playing longer, and a good UX too. And I'm not saying this to say that Another Eden is a bad game. I actually think it's a good game. But I did not like the storytelling in Another Eden, that the mobile RPG we talked about a little while ago that was done by the writer of Chrono Trigger, and Yasunori Mitsuda did the music for it. But the user experience in that game is so good. It is so tight. It is so intuitive to navigate that game. And I was just like, bam, 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 bam. I was going around, I was getting stuff done. That despite the fact that I didn't like how the dialogue was, I was like doing things, and I was hooked into the loop of the game, primarily because the user experience is so tight in Another Eden.
A lot of phone games are getting this down.
Yeah, and the UI is very intuitive. It's very easy to navigate it. So for that reason, I kept playing, and I kind of got hooked into it, and I've played it a lot more. Whereas if the UI had been more frustrating to navigate, I would have written the game off immediately because I didn't like the story very much. And now that I've hung in there, I've started to see some of the good parts of what they're doing with the story. And the entire reason I feel why I stuck with it was because the UI and the UX were I mean, immaculately well done in Another Eden. And it was easy to navigate. It was smooth. It was flashy. It was like, it looked great. And I felt like, oh, I'm accomplishing something. And I didn't have to have it tutorialized to me for an hour first. I was able to just do it.
Yeah.
That's valuable. So that saved the game for me. It saved the experience. I would have not continued playing without a great UI. So that's the power of a good UI. If you're a bad game designer, your UI might be able to keep people hanging in there long enough to click on one of your microtransactions.
Hey, you know what? That is actually a principle of UI. There are certain, depending on, and this could change depending on what your website scheme is, but there have been instances where people have changed the color of the shopping, like of the purchase button on a retail website. And just by changing the color of that button, they increase their sales by 200%. It's like, wow. UI has a huge effect specifically on sales. And sometimes just the smallest tweak, you know, maybe the stuff isn't any better than any other website, but if it's easier to buy it from your website than someone else, they're going to buy it from your website because they get it, and boom, they're going to do it. Now we're talking about video games, not sales, but when it comes to the phone games and the the in-app purchases and stuff,
sure, yeah.
All of a sudden we are kind of talking about sales, especially with these video game companies.
Couple of good questions or just comments in the chat here I want to touch on.
Yeah, we've had a lot of good ones.
This one comes from, where did it go? Light Arc. He says, Mike, what are your thoughts on Terranigma's UI?
Yeah, what did you think?
This is where I'm a little bit against the grain. I feel a lot of people don't like the philosophy behind Terranigma, or this is also true of Fable 3's menus, right? The idea of it is we're going to take menus out of it. We're going to let the player navigate as a character through a space to make selections for their armor or their items or what have you. That was more true of Fable 3 than it was of Terranigma, but it was a similar idea. In Fable 3, you press pause and you go like into a hub area. And you run around in the hub and you can look at the map in one section in one room, and you can go to like a bunch of mannequins that have armor and weapons, and you can go and select the thing you want and put it on. And items, you know, that's how they manage it. And a lot of people, the reason they don't like it is kind of what you were talking about earlier, Case, and the principle of it being fast. Being able to quickly navigate to the thing you want rather than running around in a space to find it.
As cool as it looks, when it takes time to do things, it's just annoying.
Right. So I will submit, I will give everybody who criticizes it, I will give you that point. That is a bad UI choice because it's too slow.
Yeah.
I, however, feel like in my experience it was made up for with the charm and atmosphere that came along with it. I wasn't concerned about quickly finding it because I just thought it was cool that I'm running around and I'm like taking the immersive aspect of how it worked, to me, sort of like made up for it. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed I enjoyed navigating its quote unquote menu.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just a bunch of text that I was moving a cursor on, right?
Well, you know, it's funny. This is where we come to the differences between UX and UI, right?
Yes. That
system actually provided for good UX. It was immersive, and in terms of user experience, it was, it fit with the game really well, and it was fun. But in terms of UI, it broke a lot of rules.
Yes, yeah, and that's true of Terranigma as well. Now, what in the tutorial for that menu system in Terranigma, you actually run around with Ark inside the different rooms. But throughout the game, he jumps in the box, which I love the animation for. You press select, and he like jumps, and he like squeezes into this little box. It's a really cool little animation. The animation in the game is phenomenal. But then you have an indicator, which is the little monster. Yomi. Yomi's the name of the monster that sort of like tutorialized it for you and told you how it works. He works as an indicator in those rooms to go and land on the mannequins and select the armor or like the slots. So it's kind of a midway point in between a traditional UI and like what Fable 3 did. But I like it. I think there's a lot of charm to it, and the UX is enjoyable for me, even though it is definitely a slower process, and you'll spend more time in the menu than is necessary if you had used your UI more efficiently, so to speak.
So another question here we're getting: which JRPG has the best UI?
Oh boy.
And it's Persona 5. It is.
I haven't played Persona 5, but it looks great.
Sorry, man. Persona 5 probably has the best UI of any game I've ever played.
It is so stylish.
It is so stylish.
And it's really the motion graphics on it. I mean, it's very animated.
Yeah, but it's punchy. It's quick. It's snappy, and it's like boom, and then the menu's there, and you get a click, and then it's like bam, and then you got another set of options. It's not slow. It's fast. It's intuitive. It makes sense. It's perfect.
Even without having played the game, having seen how those menus look and feel, I would almost just by default agree. Like, and that's even true of the way, like in battle, right? How you have your different battle options, and they sort of like are tracked
in battle, and it's
to the character,
and the attention is just so focused there. It's so well done.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. So I would have no problem with saying that Persona 5 is at least up there in the top 5 or top 10.
Sure, it's a game you can look to if you're making a game yourself. That's a game you can look to improve your own UI in whatever RPG you're making. Oh, some people here saying Tactics, Final Fantasy
Tactics. I don't actually remember it, so to me that indicates it was serviceable, and I didn't have a problem. But it wasn't.
Yeah, you didn't have a problem. Great. That's a good sign.
That means it was good, right? If I didn't have a problem navigating it,
you remember. When you can't do what you want to do, you remember it.
Out? Yes.
Okay, and then there were a couple other questions. that I thought we would comment on. Oh, Breath of the Wild's UI. We got a few comments about that.
I do remember, isn't it? It's been so long since I played it.
It could have been better. It definitely could have been better.
Don't you have to like hold a button down in order to like go right and left with the D-pad?
Yeah, so if you move with the left stick, you go one item over. You move with the right stick, you go a page over, and if you hit R&L, you go a whole
gosh, that was
like
terrible.
slide thing over.
I didn't like that at all.
Because I often found myself just using my left stick because I feel like that's what you should be able to do in a game, and scrolling page after page after page all the way over to get to my equipment. You know, I'm like and I just forget the R&L because is it R2 or is it R1? Anyways, I would just kind of it wasn't very intuitive for me. So Breath of the Wild's UI wasn't very good. I believe there is a reason for that, and that reason has something to do with the Wii U gamepad. It was supposed to be accessible through the Wii U gamepad via a touchscreen, which I believe would have made it so much more simple. That was not a menu that was meant to be navigated with a controller stick.
Yeah,
and they didn't change it when the game was
on the Switch,
made to be just for the Switch, and they just left that be. And I think that was a bit of a mistake. You know, great game, but the UI I think was actually a little probably on the below average of Nintendo's usual.
Sure. Now, the last thing I wanted to say on this before, wrapping up is that if you can take this even one step further, so you've applied all these principles, right? Your user interface is really easy to navigate, very intuitive. But if then you can find a way, if it fits with your game, to work it into the game world, right? For that extra step of immersion. And this is what they did in Dead Space. Dead Space, in my opinion, has the best user interface in any game I've ever played, ever. Because it doesn't have any HUD elements, right? Like you have a heads-up display where your health bar is in the top left corner and your ammo's displayed in the bottom right corner and things like that. They don't have a HUD in that traditional sense. All of the information like that is displayed on the suit or through the suit that Isaac wears.
Oh, yeah.
So he has like a tube on his back.
With this new Death Stranding game, there appears to be something of like a health meter on his backpack.
Oh, right, yeah. So yeah, on Isaac's back, there's a tube of fluid. And as you take hits, the fluid like depletes like out of the back of it. So it's like right on the back of the character, you see his health bar. And then the stasis meter, which would be, I would say, the equivalent of like magic abilities in like a medieval fantasy RPG or something. There's another, again, like fluid that kind of goes in like an arc or a circle on his back, and that sort of depletes as you use your stasis abilities. And then when you bring up the pause menu, it's a hologram that appears in front of the character, and he turns his head to the right and looks at it, and it's like he's navigating through that hologram to like go through his inventory and to like look at the map and everything, and it all appears as the character's looking at it on the screen. So the character is moved to the far left of the screen, and it kind of zooms in, and to the right of his body, he's like navigating through the menus and going through that, and then he'll like close it out. I love it when games do that, when they make the user interface part of the game world. It's that extra step of immersion kind of into the story. And if it's possible to do that, that's what I prefer generally.
It's almost the difference between like having a diegetic music versus non-diegetic music. Like if
the menu is diegetic,
Yeah, if there's a way you can put your UI and make it like make it part of the world, like it's way more immersive. One of the worst things that I guess this is something Nintendo does. And it's fine. Nintendo's UI in terms of the menu interface is always super well done, but it's never diegetic. It's never part of the world. It's always a separate thing that you kind of navigate to. I shouldn't say always. Usually that's been my experience. But whenever you can have a diegetic menu when it's literally just like right there, or you're looking at the menu as your character's looking at it, that's so immersive. I absolutely love it.
Yeah. Two things in addition to that, like, another reason why it's so cool in Dead Space is because it doesn't stop the game. So the game doesn't pause. So he's navigating his menu in real time. And if an enemy attacks you while you're in your menu, like it continues in real time versus say like Resident Evil 4, where you pause the game
scary.
And everything stops. and you can kind of
yeah.
take a breather, and you can go through and like change your equipment out or whatever. But in Dead Space, it continues to run in real time, and so it's like he is physically like navigating on this hollow image in front of him. So I really love that aspect of it. But like another example where a way that you could do this is, say, a flight simulator or a shooter where you're in like a vehicle, right?
Yeah, that way it's all displayed on the dashboard.
If you're in the cockpit, it should all be displayed on a dashboard in front of you. All of that information, like as if it's, you know, for the pilot to like look down and reference. But then when you're outside the ship, if it's a third person view, obviously that's got to go up into a HUD. You couldn't like integrate it in the same way, right? But it's that kind of touch. I think Star Fox does that. I don't remember for sure if Star Fox 64 does that, but I think if you switch from the third person view into the cockpit view, it displays some of those elements of the UI on the cockpit like display. So I really like it when they do stuff like that too.
Yeah, Star Fox does a good job, and especially with the whole like idea of the hologram, just in general, because Star Fox has that little. What do you think?
The little eye thing?
Yeah, the little eye flip over that goes over it. So that way, when you see the aimer, and it looks like it's kind of going in 3D space in a weird way that doesn't make sense if it was actually being displayed on his windshield, for lack of a better word. That's because he's got that little flippy thing on his eye, and so you are still kind of technically seeing what he's seeing, and that stuff's displayed via like a hologram kind of thing. And I think that's really cool when they can do stuff like that. Not every game can do it, but games like I was going to bring up Arkham Asylum or Arkham Knight.
Oh, yes.
Or games like, what was that open world PS4 game that everyone was...
Horizon Zero Dawn?
Horizon Zero Dawn. When you can create a system within the world, a diegetic... I know they have their menus and stuff, but for the most part, while you're playing the game, you've got your own little UI that's part of the HUD, but that's actually there. You are actually seeing what she sees because she has this weird technology thing that's giving her that insight. Same thing with Batman in Arkham Asylum. You see the outlines of characters and items and doors, and that is UI. UI isn't just, you know, the pause menus and stuff. It's the whole experience of the game. In terms of the way all that information is displayed. And when you've got games like Horizon Zero Dawn, I know not every game can do this, which is the problem. It's only like the techie futuristic games. But when you can add an element like that to your game, it just makes it so much more immersive. It is absolutely beautiful.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that. I liked the UI in Horizon and in the Arkham games quite a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, well...
Oh, and Deus Ex does that very well.
Deus Ex does a good job with that too, because of the implants, right? Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Colin Plusa says Top Gun on NES did it perfectly.
Top Gun? I never played that.
That game is notoriously bad for trying to like land the plane onto the
wait, is that the one? Okay, yeah.
You keep crashing in the ocean.
Yeah, I think I saw Angry Video Game Nerd like 10 years ago trying to do that and freaking out because of how hard it was.
Yep. And then he did a follow-up video to that years later where he tried to do it with the
with the glove.
He tried to land.
And he did it first try.
The power glove. He did it the first try.
Oh man, what's that guy doing now? I haven't seen anything from him.
Same stuff. I haven't. You know, it's kind of gotten old. I think he's kind of tired of it too. You can kind of tell he doesn't have the energy that he used to have.
Yeah.
So I kind of stopped watching. But War says, speaking of HUDs, I like how games like Horizon Zero Dawn and the newest God of War have dynamic HUDs that only pop up when you're in combat. Oh, yeah, so when you're just running around, all those elements fall away. But when you're in battle and you need to see your health bar and stuff like that,
I got you.
Fades in. Yeah.
Then they pop up.
Right. So it kind of like frees up the space on the screen for you to observe, especially in God of War and Horizon Zero Dawn. Actually, they have these beautiful landscapes, and they want you to look
the cinematic games. I think need the UI needs to the HUD. It just needs to get out of the way for the games that are cinematic.
Yeah, so you can see the landscapes, and you can see the beautiful graphics and all the art that went into creating the assets. And then when you're fighting and you need that information, then it comes up. I think that's an efficient use of space, which would
when you say, "Oh, look how beautiful this is," and the person next to you goes, "What, the health bar?" And you say, "No, not the health bar, boy, the land." And it's the land. Look past the health bar. Anyways.
And then he says, "Well, where's the God rays?"
But I don't want that. Yeah. God rays, that's right.
Dude McGuy says Uncharted games do that as well. Yep, they're very much meant to be cinematic. Last of Us.
The cinematic games. I think they've learned. They know Get that HUD out.
Some people really worked for a long time, especially in shooters, to get away from health bars altogether by just having like blood sort of fill in the screen.
Yeah, Call of Duty, I think, kind of started that.
So it's like, oh, I'm almost dead. I better like take cover for a second and wait and recover. Anyways,
it's cool. It's cool. I think that works pretty well. Yeah, it works better than health bar because sometimes health bars are a bit deceiving. It's like, oh, I have this much health left, but what if you get shot in the head? Like you're done. Like it's over.
Yeah,
you know, the headshot. It doesn't matter how much health you have left. So in some sense, it's like just having health, knowing that you're in trouble and whatever that means. Get out, find cover. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think the Gears of War did that pretty well too.
Yeah,
that game gets hectic like crazy when you're getting shot at.
Yep. Okay, that's it. We don't have any community stories for this week. Nobody decided to share their work with us. Again, if you would like to, if you have a project you're working on and you would like us to share it on the podcast, go to our Discord server under the State of the Art podcast category. We have a community stories channel, and you can share your work with us there, and we'll share it on the podcast. Also, if you want to ask us additional questions, if there's things that you'd like us to talk about, things you'd like to know, you can always ask there as well, or on Patreon. I create posts for that, and so that's where we come up with the community stories section. But this week we have nothing there, so we're going to wrap up the podcast for today. Thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for your support of the channel. And I've been talking about my Terranigma video here for a while, and I was kind of stuck on exactly how I wanted to approach it. But today I resolutely arrived at the answer for how I want to start and structure that video. So I'm going to be moving with a full head of steam into this week, and we'll see if I can have it done by the following week. So it could be ready for just the very end of February, or at latest the first week of like March or something like that.
Cool.
So that's when you can expect to see the next video. Till then, have a good rest of your Sunday and weekend, everybody. For you who are watching this later in the week when it goes up live on YouTube and everything else, have a good remainder of your week. We'll see you again soon. Peace out.